My name is Emilio, and I just turned 53 last month. For 18 years, I poured every ounce of my being into being a good father to my son Tyler. After Margaret and I divorced 5 years ago, I watched as my son slowly slipped away from me. Today was supposed to be a celebration, Tyler's 18th birthday. Instead, it became the moment that shattered what was left of my heart. "This is my real dad, Jackson," Tyler announced to the room, his arm around his stepfather's shoulders. Then he pointed at me and said, "And that's my mom's ex." I smiled through the pain, but what I did next left everyone in that room completely speechless. Before I tell you what happened, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button, and stick around to see how I maintained my dignity in the face of ultimate betrayal. I was born to Italian immigrants who came to America with nothing but the clothes on their backs and dreams of a better life. My father worked in construction, coming home with calloused hands and a tired smile. My mother cleaned houses, her knees perpetually bruised from scrubbing floors. They taught me that hard work and family were the two pillars of a good life. I carried those lessons into adulthood, determined to build something meaningful. I met Margaret during my second year of college. I was studying engineering while working nights at a local factory to pay tuition. She was a business major with bright eyes and a laugh that could light up a room. We were young in love and certain we would conquer the world together. After graduation, we married in a small ceremony with just our closest friends and family. 2 years later, Tyler was born. The first time I held my son in my arms, a fierce protectiveness washed over me. His tiny fingers wrapped around my thumb, and I made a silent promise that I would always be there for him. I would be the kind of father who showed up, who taught him how to be a good man, who would move mountains to give him a better life than I had. When Tyler was 3, I was offered a prestigious job with an engineering firm in San Francisco. The salary was double what I was making, but it would have meant relocating across the country from our home in Pennsylvania. Margaret and I talked it through, and ultimately, I turned it down. Tyler had just started preschool, and Margaret's parents lived nearby and helped with childcare. Our roots were there, and I believed that stability and family connections were more important than a bigger paycheck. Instead, I took a job with a local construction company. The hours were long, often 70 a week, between the main job and weekend side projects, but it allowed us to buy a modest house in a good school district and put money aside for Tyler's college fund. Every morning I left before sunrise, and many nights I returned after Tyler was asleep. On those nights I would still go to his room and sit beside his bed sometimes, just watching him breathe, grateful for the life we were building. Despite the demanding work schedule, I carved out sacred time for Tyler. I taught him to ride a bike, running alongside him as he wobbled down our street, his face a mixture of concentration and joy. When he was 7, he joined Little League, and I volunteered as an assistant coach. My boss allowed me to rearrange my schedule so I could make it to every game, standing on the sidelines, cheering whether Tyler struck out or hit a home run. For Tyler's 8th birthday, I spent weeks building him a treehouse in our backyard. My hands were raw and splintered, but seeing his face light up when I showed it to him made every minute of work worthwhile. That treehouse became our special place. On weekend mornings, we would climb up with comic books and snacks, Tyler asking questions about everything from how airplanes fly to why the sky is blue. I did my best to answer, and when I did not know, we looked up the answers together. I remember Tyler's 10th birthday vividly. He had a few friends over for a small party in our backyard. As they arrived, Tyler proudly introduced me to each one. "This is my dad. He builds stuff. He made my treehouse all by himself." The pride in his voice filled my chest with warmth. That night, after everyone had gone home, Tyler hugged me tight and said, "Thanks for being the best dad ever." It was one of the happiest moments of my life. Around that time, I noticed the first cracks in my marriage. Margaret had returned to work full-time as an office manager at a law firm once Tyler started school. She complained that I was never home, that she felt like a single parent. I tried to explain that the hours I worked were for our family, for Tyler's future, but she saw it differently. Tyler needs a father who's present, not just a provider, she would say during our increasingly frequent arguments. As Tyler entered his early teen years, I noticed him becoming more distant too. The boy who once ran to the door when I came home started staying in his room with the door closed. Our weekend mornings in the treehouse became less frequent, replaced by Tyler sleeping in or making plans with friends. I told myself it was normal adolescent behavior, that he was establishing his independence, but a part of me feared I was losing my connection with my son. The contrast between those early years and what was coming still haunts me. That little boy who once looked at me like I hung the moon and stars would soon be looking at me like a stranger. But even then, I had no idea just how complete the severing of our bond would become. The strain in our marriage continued to grow as Tyler entered middle school. Margaret's resentment toward my work hours escalated despite the comfortable lifestyle those hours provided. We had a nice home, took annual vacations, and never worried about making ends meet, but emotional distance had crept between us like an invisible wall. "You are a ghost in this family, Emilio," Margaret said during one particularly heated argument. "You think providing financially is enough, but Tyler and I need more than your paycheck. We need you here present with us." I tried to explain that my work was an expression of love, not a substitute for it. "Everything I do is for you and Tyler," I insisted. "I am trying to give our son opportunities I never had." "He would rather have a father who attends his school events than one who can buy him expensive things," she countered. I made efforts to adjust my schedule, turning down overtime when possible and making sure to be present for important family events. But construction deadlines were often inflexible, and the reality was that our lifestyle depended on my income. Margaret had a good job, but mine was the primary source of our financial stability. The real turning point came when Margaret started her new position at the law firm. She had been promoted from office manager to executive assistant for one of the senior partners, Jackson Whitfield. At first, she mentioned him casually, describing him as brilliant and demanding, but fair. Gradually, his name appeared more frequently in her conversations. "Jackson said the funniest thing today," she would say over dinner. Or, "Jackson has been teaching me about fine wines. He says my palate is quite sophisticated." I noticed she began dressing differently for work, paying more attention to her appearance. When I complimented her new look, she brushed it off, saying she needed to present herself professionally in her new role. 6 months into her new position, I woke in the middle of the night to find Margaret's side of the bed empty. I went downstairs and found her in the kitchen, texting on her phone with a small smile on her face. When she noticed me, she quickly put the phone down. "Who are you texting at 2 a.m.?" I asked. "Just catching up on work emails," she said, but her eyes did not meet mine. The next day, while Margaret was in the shower, I did something I had never done before, and am not proud of. I looked at her phone. There were dozens of text messages between her and Jackson, many sent late at night, full of inside jokes and subtle flirtations. Nothing explicitly inappropriate, but the intimacy of their exchanges was unmistakable. When I confronted her, Margaret initially became defensive. "He is my boss, Emilio. We have to communicate about work matters. At 2 in the morning, about how much he misses your laugh and how the office feels empty when you take a day off." Her expression changed then from defensiveness to a mixture of guilt and defiance. "It is not what you think. We have not done anything wrong. Emotional affairs are still betrayals, Margaret." After a long silence, she admitted that she had developed feelings for Jackson, but insisted nothing physical had happened. I suggested marriage counseling, trying to salvage what we had built together, thinking of Tyler and how a divorce would affect him. Margaret reluctantly agreed to counseling, but after 3 sessions, she stopped going. "It is not working," she said. "I feel like the counselor is taking your side, making me out to be the villain." 2 weeks later, after Tyler had gone to bed, Margaret sat me down in our living room. "I want a divorce, Emilio. I am not happy and I do not think I have been for a long time." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What about Tyler? Have you thought about what this will do to him? Kids are resilient," she said. "Besides, staying in an unhappy marriage would hurt him more in the long run." What Margaret did not know was that Tyler had not gone to bed that night. Later I learned he had been sitting at the top of the stairs, listening to every word. And Margaret had not just asked for a divorce that night. She had painted a narrative that would shape Tyler's perception of our family breakdown for years to come. "You were never here, Emilio," she had said loudly, perhaps knowing our son might overhear. "You chose your work over us every time. I have been basically raising Tyler alone while you built your career. We deserve someone who puts us first." I moved out the following week, taking only personal belongings and enough furniture for a small 1-bedroom apartment 15 minutes away. I wanted to stay close to Tyler to minimize the disruption to his life. That first night alone in my new place, surrounded by boxes and without the sounds of my family moving through the house, was one of the lowest points of my life. I called Tyler to say goodnight, but he was short with me, his voice cold, in a way I had never heard before. "Mom said you left because work is more important to you than we are," he said before hanging up. The seed had been planted, and I had no idea how deeply its roots would grow. The divorce proceedings began with what I thought was a reasonable proposal: joint custody of Tyler, with a fair division of assets. Margaret and I had built our life together, and while the marriage had failed, I believed we could co-parent effectively. I was quickly proven wrong. Margaret's initial filing requested full custody with only limited visitation rights for me. Her attorney cited my excessive work hours and emotional unavailability as reasons why Tyler should primarily live with her. I was blindsided. Despite the problems in our marriage, I had always been an involved father, and Tyler and I had shared a close bond for most of his life. I hired an attorney, draining my savings account to pay the retainer. "We will fight this," my lawyer assured me. "Your work history shows you are a dedicated provider, and we have documentation of your involvement in Tyler's activities. No judge will severely restrict your access to your son without evidence of abuse or neglect." While the legal battle unfolded, I tried to maintain my relationship with Tyler. Our court-approved temporary arrangement allowed me to have him every other weekend and one evening during the week for dinner. The first few visits were awkward and strained. Tyler, now 14, was sullen and withdrawn, spending most of his time at my apartment on his phone or playing video games. When I tried to engage him in conversation, he gave one-word answers. "Is everything okay at school?" I would ask. "Fine," he would respond without looking up. "How about we go fishing this weekend, like we used to at Lake Matthews?" "Whatever." During this time, I discovered that Jackson had begun spending time at my former home. Tyler let it slip during one of our dinners, mentioning casually that Mom's friend from work had helped him with a science project. The casual way he said it suggested this was not a one-time occurrence. When I picked Tyler up for our next weekend visit, I saw Jackson's car in the driveway. As we drove away, I carefully asked, "So Jackson comes over often?" Tyler shrugged. "He is there most nights and weekends now. He is pretty cool. He knows a lot about computers and helped me set up a gaming system in my room." The knot in my stomach tightened. Not only was Margaret moving on quickly, but she had also allowed her new boyfriend to establish a relationship with our son while the divorce was still pending. More concerning was how she appeared to be facilitating a replacement father figure for Tyler. During a particularly painful incident, Tyler called me on a Friday night to cancel our planned weekend visit. We had been planning a fishing trip for months, one I had arranged specifically because Tyler had expressed interest in returning to an activity we had once enjoyed together. "I cannot come this weekend," he said flatly. "Why not, buddy? We have been planning the fishing trip for ages." There was a pause before he answered. "Jackson is taking me and some friends to a basketball game. They are floor seats." I swallowed my hurt. "Tyler, we had plans. I already rented the boat and gear." "It is the Lakers' dad. Floor seats. Jackson knows one of the players and said we might get to meet them after the game." How could I compete with floor seats and NBA player meetups? "We had a commitment to each other," I said, trying to keep the pain out of my voice. "It is just fishing," Tyler replied. "We can do that any time." But we could not. Because the next weekend was Margaret's, and the one after that, Tyler had a school event, and gradually our every other weekend arrangement became more sporadic, as Tyler found reasons to cancel our time together. Meanwhile, the financial aspects of the divorce were becoming equally challenging. Despite the fact that Jackson was a senior partner at a prestigious law firm with an income far exceeding mine, Margaret's attorney pushed for substantial child support and alimony. To meet these demands, I took on additional side jobs on my already limited free time, further reducing my availability for Tyler. 6 months into the separation, we finally had our day in court for the custody hearing. I had gathered character references from Tyler's teachers, the Little League coach, and parents of his friends, all testifying to my involvement in his life. I had documentation of every school event I had attended, every doctor's appointment, every parent-teacher conference. In the courtroom, I watched as Margaret painted a picture of me as a workaholic father who had always prioritized career over family. She testified that Tyler was thriving in her care and that disrupting his new routine with equal shared custody would be detrimental to his well-being. When my attorney asked about Jackson's role, Margaret smiled. "Jackson has been a positive influence in Tyler's life. They have bonded over shared interests, and Jackson has been helping Tyler prepare for college applications." The judge ultimately ruled for joint legal custody, but gave Margaret primary physical custody. I would have Tyler every other weekend and 1 evening a week, plus split holidays and 2 weeks in the summer. It was less than I had hoped for, but more than Margaret had initially requested. As I drove home alone after the hearing, I allowed myself to cry for the first time since the separation began. Not just for the reduced time with my son, but for the relationship that seemed to be slipping away despite my best efforts to hold on. In the months following the custody ruling, Jackson's presence in Tyler's life expanded, while mine continued to diminish. No longer constrained by the scrutiny of pending divorce proceedings, Jackson fully embraced the role of surrogate father with Margaret's enthusiastic support. Where I had always balanced nurturing with necessary discipline, Jackson took a different approach. He became the fun dad, the one who said yes when I would have said no, who solved problems with money rather than teaching Tyler to work through challenges. For Tyler's 16th birthday, while I saved to buy him a sensible used car we could afford, Jackson surprised him with a brand new sports car. Jackson says I need to learn responsibility by having something valuable to take care of. Tyler informed me when I expressed concern about a 16-year-old driving such a powerful vehicle. "Responsibility usually starts with earning something, not having it handed to you," I replied, immediately regretting the criticism when I saw Tyler's face harden. "Jackson says your views on money come from growing up without it," Tyler said dismissively. "He says it is an outdated mindset." These comparisons became increasingly common. "Jackson says" became the preface to Tyler contradicting my guidance or values. Jackson said designer clothes were an investment in self-presentation. Jackson said working with your hands was becoming obsolete in the digital economy. Jackson said Tyler's future was in business or law, not manual trades like construction. Each comparison was a small cut, but together they formed a gaping wound. My son was not just growing distant. He was being taught to view my life choices, values, and wisdom as inferior to Jackson's worldview. I discovered they had begun engaging in activities that had once been special between Tyler and me. Fishing, which Tyler had dismissed as boring when I suggested it, became a regular activity when Jackson proposed it. The baseball games I could rarely afford became regular outings with Jackson in premium seats. Even our tradition of making homemade pizza on Sunday nights had been appropriated, with Tyler casually mentioning that Jackson had installed a wood-fired pizza oven in their backyard. Then came Margaret and Jackson's wedding, just 18 months after our divorce was finalized. I learned about it not through any direct communication, but when Tyler mentioned it offhandedly during one of our increasingly rare dinners together. "I cannot make it next weekend," he said, eyes on his phone as always. "Mom and Jackson are getting married, and I am the best man." The fork froze halfway to my mouth. "You are the best man." Tyler nodded, still not looking up. "Jackson asked me last month. He said since I am the most important person in Mom's life, it made sense for me to be the most important person in their wedding." "I see," I managed to say, though my chest felt tight. "When was someone going to tell me about this?" Tyler shrugged. "I thought you knew. It is not like you were invited or anything." Later that night, I made the mistake of looking at Margaret's social media. There they were, dozens of photos of wedding preparations. Margaret and Tyler shopping for suits. Jackson teaching Tyler how to tie a bow tie. The three of them at cake tastings, venue tours, and rehearsal dinners. They looked like a perfect family, with no empty space suggesting anyone was missing. The day of their wedding, I sat alone in my apartment, feeling Tyler's absence like a physical pain. I had suggested we move our weekend together, but he had replied that he would be too busy with wedding stuff to see me for the next 2 weeks. That night, I allowed myself one moment of weakness. I broke down, completely sobbing, until my throat was raw, grieving not just my failed marriage, but the son who was slipping away from me. The next blow came on my birthday. Tyler had never missed acknowledging my birthday, even during the worst periods of the divorce. But this year, my phone remained silent. No call, no text, not even a perfunctory social media message. When I called him that evening, the call went straight to voicemail. The next day, he texted a brief, "Sorry, was busy with school stuff. Happy late birthday." The pattern continued as Jackson inserted himself into every aspect of Tyler's life. When parent-teacher conferences came around, Tyler told me not to bother coming. Mom and Jackson already signed up for all the time slots. At his high school baseball games, where I stood alone on the sidelines, it was Jackson sitting with the other dads. Jackson cheering loudly. When Tyler made a good play, Jackson treating the team to pizza afterward. Most painful was watching Tyler transform under Jackson's influence. The kind, somewhat shy boy who had once proudly introduced me as the dad who built his treehouse was becoming materialistic and entitled. His social media showed a parade of expensive clothes, electronics, and experiences, all courtesy of Jackson's wealth. When I expressed concern about this focus on material things, Tyler accused me of being jealous. "Just because you could never provide this lifestyle does not mean I should have to live like we are poor," he snapped during one argument. "We were never poor, Tyler," I said quietly. "We had everything we needed and much of what we wanted. There is a difference between being poor and being responsible with money." "Whatever, Ma," he said, using his favorite dismissal. Jackson says learning to appreciate quality things is part of becoming successful. The Christmas after Tyler turned 17 marked a new low in our deteriorating relationship. I had spent weeks making him a handcrafted chess set, remembering how I had taught him to play when he was 9. Each piece was carefully carved and finished, the board inlaid with contrasting woods. I wrapped it carefully and presented it to him during our brief holiday visit. Tyler unwrapped it, looked at it without expression, and set it aside with a quick, "Thanks." The next day, Margaret sent me a text. "Tyler asked me to return your gift to you. He said he does not have space for it and will never use it. I am leaving it in a box on the porch." When I arrived to retrieve the rejected gift, I found it had not even been fully removed from the packaging. As I placed it in my truck, I noticed Jackson's latest gift to Tyler parked in the driveway, a motorcycle that probably cost more than I made in 3 months. Around this time, I received a significant promotion at work. After years of dedication, I was named project manager for the construction company's largest development to date. It should have been a moment of celebration, a validation of my hard work and skills. But I had no family to share it with, no one waiting at home with cake and congratulations. I called Tyler to share my news, hoping this achievement might make him proud, might help him see the purpose behind all those long work hours. "That is cool, Dad," he said, distracted. "Hey, I have to go. Jackson is taking me to look at potential colleges this weekend." Even this milestone, the college search that I had been saving for since Tyler's birth, had been co-opted. I ended the call and sat in my empty living room, wondering if there was anything left of my relationship with my son to salvage. As Tyler's senior year progressed, I reached out about his 17th birthday, suggesting we celebrate together the weekend after his actual birthday, which fell on Margaret's time. My text went unanswered for days. When he finally responded, it was with a brief, "Already have plans with friends that weekend." No counteroffer, no alternative suggestion. Just another door closed in my face. 3 weeks before Tyler's 18th birthday, I received an unexpected text message from Margaret. "Tyler's birthday party is on the 15th at 4 p.m. at our house. He wants you to come." I read the message several times, a mix of surprise and cautious hope rising in my chest. This was the first time in nearly 2 years that I had been explicitly invited to any event at their home. Perhaps Tyler was maturing, recognizing the importance of having both parents present for this milestone birthday. I spent the next 3 weeks carefully preparing. For his gift, I selected a handsome watch, one I had been setting money aside for over the past year. It was not as flashy or expensive as what Jackson might give him, but it was quality and came with a heartfelt card expressing my pride in the young man he was becoming, despite our difficulties. I also had a second, more meaningful gift planned, but I kept that one close to my chest. On the day of the party, I dressed in my best suit, the one I reserved for special occasions at work. Looking in the mirror, I noticed more gray at my temples than the last time I had worn it, more lines around my eyes. 5 difficult years had left their mark on me. Still, I straightened my tie, grabbed the carefully wrapped gift, and drove to the house that had once been my home. Jackson and Margaret had built a new house 2 years earlier, a sprawling mansion in the most exclusive neighborhood in town. As I pulled into the circular driveway, already filled with luxury vehicles, I felt immediately out of place. My 10-year-old truck, well-maintained, but showing its age, looked as out of place as I felt. The front door was open, with guests making their way inside. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and walked in with as much dignity as I could muster. The interior was even more impressive than the exterior, with soaring ceilings, designer furniture, and what appeared to be original artwork on the walls. A catering staff circulated with trays of appetizers and champagne. Margaret spotted me first. She approached with a practiced smile that did not reach her eyes. "Emilio, glad you could make it. Her tone suggested the opposite. "Thank you for inviting me," I replied politely. "Where is Tyler?" "Somewhere around here with his friends," she said vaguely, already turning away to greet other guests. I moved through the crowded space, nodding at a few parents I recognized from Tyler's school events. Many gave me awkward smiles or quickly found reasons to move away. Everyone knew the situation, and no one quite knew how to interact with the ex-husband who had been effectively replaced. Finally, I spotted Tyler near the pool out back, surrounded by a group of friends. He had grown taller in recent months, his shoulders broader. He looked so much like I had at his age that it made my heart ache. I approached slowly, not wanting to embarrass him in front of his peers. "Tyler," I said, when there was a break in their conversation. "Happy birthday, son." He turned, and for a brief moment something like warmth flickered in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by the cool indifference I had grown accustomed to. "Oh, Dad, thanks for coming." No hug, not even a handshake. Just an acknowledgement of my presence that felt more like tolerance than welcome. "You look great," I said, genuinely proud of the young man standing before me. 18. I can hardly believe it." "Yeah," he said, already glancing back at his friends, clearly eager to return to their conversation. "I brought you something," I said, holding out the wrapped gift. "Thanks," he replied, taking it without enthusiasm. "I will open it with the others later." "Of course," I nodded, stepping back. "I will let you get back to your friends." Throughout the next hour, I watched from a distance as Tyler moved through the party, with confidence at ease in this world of wealth and privilege that Jackson had introduced him to. He laughed with Jackson, their body language comfortable and familiar, while barely acknowledging my presence. I remained on the periphery, nursing a single glass of champagne, an outsider, at my own son's birthday celebration. When the time came for cake and presents, everyone gathered in the massive great room. Jackson stood at the front, near a table piled with elaborately wrapped gifts, his arm around Margaret's waist, the perfect host in his designer clothes and expensive watch. "Before we sing to the man of the hour," Jackson announced, "Tyler wants to say a few words." Tyler stepped forward, looking handsome and self-assured, in clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He smiled at the assembled guests. "Thanks everyone for coming today. It means a lot to have all the important people in my life here to celebrate with me." His eyes scanned the room, briefly passing over me without pausing. "I especially want to thank my mom and dad for putting this amazing party together." My heart lifted for a moment, until he continued gesturing toward Jackson. "My dad has always pushed me to be my best self, and shown me what success really looks like." The room felt suddenly airless. Jackson beamed, pulling Tyler into a one-armed hug. Then Tyler pointed in my direction. "And I guess I should also thank my mom's ex for showing up today." The words hit me like a physical blow. My mom's ex. Not my father. Not even my other dad. Just my mom's ex. As if our bond had been entirely erased, as if the 18 years of love and sacrifice meant nothing. A hushed murmur ran through the crowd. I saw pitying glances directed my way, saw Margaret's slight smirk, saw Jackson's barely concealed triumph. But most painfully, I saw no regret or hesitation on Tyler's face. He had delivered the words deliberately, making his choice clear to everyone present. In that moment, I had a decision to make. I could walk out with what little dignity I had left. I could make a scene, confront the disrespect publicly. Or I could stay, swallow the hurt, and try once more to reach the son who seemed determined to reject me. As the uncomfortable silence stretched, I felt every eye in the room on me, waiting to see how I would react to this public humiliation. What happened next would determine not just this moment, but possibly the future of my relationship with my son. The room remained awkwardly silent for several seconds after Tyler's introduction. I could feel the weight of every stare, the collective discomfort of witnesses to my public dismissal. Some guests studied their shoes, others exchanged knowing glances. Jackson stood tall, a satisfied smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Margaret looked on with cool detachment, making no move to correct or soften our son's words. But it was Tyler's expression that made my decision for me. Behind the confident facade he presented, I caught a glimpse of something else in his eyes. Not malice or hatred, but uncertainty, perhaps even a flicker of regret. My son was still in there somewhere beneath the influence and materialism that had reshaped him. I straightened my shoulders and stepped forward, my face composed into a calm smile that betrayed none of the anguish churning inside me. The room grew even quieter. "If I may," I said, my voice steady and clear, "I would like to say a few words too." Tyler looked startled, clearly not expecting me to speak. Jackson's smile faltered slightly. Margaret's eyes narrowed. "Of course," Jackson said after a moment, his tone magnanimous, confident. This could only add to my humiliation. I moved to stand near Tyler, maintaining a respectful distance, but close enough that he could not avoid my gaze. "Tyler," I began, "18 years ago you came into this world and changed mine forever. I may not have been perfect. I worked long hours trying to build security for our family. Perhaps I got the balance wrong, sometimes focusing too much on providing and not enough on being present. For that, I am truly sorry." Tyler's eyes widened, slightly surprised by the direction I was taking. "But I want you to know that every hour I worked, every promotion I chased, every early morning and late night was driven by one thing, my love for you and my desire to give you the best life possible." I paused, looking directly at my son, speaking now, as if we were the only two people in the room. "I have never stopped loving you, not for a single moment. Even when weeks pass without us speaking. Even when you cancel our plans. Even when you call me your mom's ex instead of your father. My love has never wavered, because that is what being a parent means. Unconditional love even when it hurts." The room was completely still now. I could see Margaret shifting uncomfortably, Jackson's confident posture slightly deflated. "I brought you 2 gifts today," I continued. "The first is there with your other presents." I gestured toward the gift table. "But the second I would like to give you now, if that is all right." Without waiting for permission, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. I held it out to Tyler, who hesitated before taking it. "Go ahead," I encouraged gently. "It is okay to open it now." With all eyes on him, Tyler carefully opened the envelope and removed the papers inside. He scanned them, his brow furrowing in confusion. "It is a college fund," I explained for the benefit of the onlookers. "I started it the day you were born with my first paycheck after you came home from the hospital. Every month since then, without fail, I have added to it. Even after the divorce, even when money was tightest, I never missed a contribution." Tyler looked up from the papers, genuine surprise on his face. "There is $120,000 in that account," I said. "Not a loan, not with strings attached. It is yours for your education to help you build your future." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Even Jackson looked taken aback. "After your mother and I separated," I continued, "I took a second job working weekends. Those extra hours were not for me. They were not even for child support. They were solely to keep contributing to this fund to make sure you would have this opportunity." Tyler swallowed hard, looking down at the paperwork again, at the columns showing 18 years of consistent deposits. You may not remember this, but when you were 10, you asked me why I worked so much. I told you I was building something important. This is what I was building, Tyler. Not just a house or a lifestyle, but a foundation for your future. I saw something shift in Tyler's expression, a dawning realization that perhaps he had misjudged my priorities all along. I have made mistakes, and I am far from perfect, I acknowledged. But please know that everything I have done, every sacrifice I have made, has been out of love for you. Whether you call me Dad or Emilio or your mom's ex, that will never change. I stepped back, then conscious that I had said enough. The atmosphere in the room had transformed completely. Where there had been awkward tension and second-hand embarrassment for me, there was now a different kind of discomfort, a collective reassessment of the narrative everyone had accepted. Jackson cleared his throat. Well, that is quite generous, he said, struggling to regain control of the moment. I think it is time for cake, do not you? But no one moved toward the cake. All eyes remained on Tyler, who stood frozen, the college fund documentation still in his hands, his face a storm of conflicting emotions. Thank you, he finally said, his voice small and uncertain, so different from his confident dismissal minutes earlier. I nodded, then moved quietly back to my place at the edge of the gathering. The party resumed with Jackson loudly directing everyone's attention to the cake and Margaret efficiently moving things along. But something had changed. Throughout the rest of the celebration, I caught Tyler glancing my way repeatedly, his expression thoughtful, confused, as if seeing me clearly for the first time in years. As the party wound down, I decided it was time for me to leave. I had accomplished what I came to do, not to shame or embarrass my son, but to remind him of the truth of our relationship, to plant a seed that might someday grow back into the bond we once shared. I was walking to my truck when I heard footsteps behind me. Dad, Tyler called. Not Emilio, not hey. Dad. I turned to find him standing a few feet away, looking younger and more vulnerable than he had all day. I will walk you out, he said simply. We moved toward my truck in silence. When we reached it, Tyler spoke again. I did not know about the college fund, about the second job. You were not supposed to know, I replied gently. That was not your burden to carry. But all this time I thought, he trailed off, unable to finish the thought. It is okay, I assured him. You were young when the divorce happened. You were told a story that made sense to you at the time. He looked down at his expensive shoes, then back at me. Can I call you tomorrow? It was a small offering, but in that moment it felt enormous. I would like that very much, I said. As I drove away, I glanced in my rearview mirror. Tyler still stood in the driveway watching me go. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope that not everything between us was lost. The morning after Tyler's birthday party, I woke early, my mind replaying the events of the previous day. I had gone to bed with mixed emotions, hurt from Tyler's public dismissal, but cautious hope from our brief exchange in the driveway. I did not know if he would actually call as he had suggested. Years of disappointment had taught me to temper my expectations. I was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee when my phone rang at 10:17 a.m. Tyler's name appeared on the screen. My heart raced as I answered. Hello, Dad. His voice sounded hesitant, nothing like the confident young man who had introduced me as Mom's ex just a day earlier. Good morning, Tyler. It is good to hear from you. I kept my tone warm but neutral, not wanting to overreact and scare him off. I was wondering, He paused, seeming to gather courage. Could we maybe get coffee or something today to talk? I would like that very much, I replied, trying to contain my surprise and joy. Where would you like to meet? We agreed on a coffee shop halfway between our homes. As I pulled into the parking lot 2 hours later, I spotted Tyler already there, sitting at an outdoor table, fidgeting with a napkin. He wore jeans and a simple t-shirt, looking more like the boy I remembered than the polished young adult from the party. When I approached, he stood awkwardly, as if unsure whether to shake my hand or hug me. We settled for a brief, stiff embrace before sitting down. Thanks for meeting me, he said, his eyes not quite meeting mine. I am always happy to spend time with you, Tyler. You know that. He nodded, then took a deep breath. I wanted to apologize for yesterday, for what I said introducing you that way. It was disrespectful. Thank you, I said simply. That means a lot to me. It is just... He trailed off, struggling to find words. For so long, Mom and Jackson have been telling me that you chose work over us, that you did not fight hard enough for custody, that you were relieved to be free of family responsibilities. The familiar pain flared again at these distortions, but I kept my expression neutral. And you believed them. They were there every day. You were not. A flash of the old accusation returned, then faded as quickly as it had appeared. But that fund, all those years of deposits, it does not fit with what they said about you. No, I agreed quietly. It does not. Tyler looked down at his untouched coffee. Mom was really angry after you left yesterday. She said you were trying to buy my affection, that it was a manipulative stunt. I had expected as much. What do you think? He considered the question carefully. I think if you wanted to buy my affection, you would have told me about the fund years ago. You would have used it to compete with Jackson's gifts. But you did not. You just kept adding to it even when I was... He faltered. Even when you were pulling away, I finished gently. Yeah. He met my eyes directly for the first time. Why did you not tell me how hard you were working for my future? Why did you let me believe what they were saying? I took a moment to organize my thoughts, knowing this answer mattered. I did not want to put you in the middle, Tyler. You were already dealing with so much change, and criticizing your mother or Jackson would only have pushed you further away. I hoped that someday when you were older, you might see things differently on your own. It must have hurt, he said quietly. The things I said to you, the way I treated you. Yes, I admitted. It hurt very much. But that is part of being a parent too sometimes. Accepting hurt without passing it back to your child. Tyler's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I am sorry, he whispered. I have been horrible to you. You were influenced by the adults in your life during a confusing time, I said. I never blamed you for that, Tyler. We talked for nearly 3 hours that day, longer than we had spoken in the past 5 years combined. Tyler asked questions about the divorce, about my relationship with his mother, about the choices I had made. I answered honestly but carefully, never disparaging Margaret or Jackson, focusing instead on helping him understand my perspective. As our conversation wound down, Tyler asked hesitantly, "Can we do this again, maybe next weekend?" "I would like nothing better," I replied. True to her pattern, Margaret called that evening furious. "What are you trying to do, Emilio? Undermine everything Jackson and I have built with Tyler. I am just being his father, Margaret. Nothing more, nothing less." Well, he came home full of questions and doubts. Jackson is very upset. I am sorry to hear that. I said, not feeling sorry at all. But Tyler is 18 now. He has a right to form his own opinions and relationships. He says he wants to spend next weekend with you instead of going to the lake house with us. This is exactly the kind of disruption I was afraid of. I ended the call as quickly as possible, not wanting her negativity to dim the hope I was feeling for the first time in years. Over the next few months, Tyler and I rebuilt our relationship one conversation at a time. Sometimes we met for coffee, other times for meals or walks in the park. Gradually, the awkwardness faded, replaced by growing comfort and tentative trust. I suggested that I start seeing a therapist to work through my own issues from the divorce and estrangement, setting an example that it was okay to seek help. A few weeks later, Tyler mentioned he had started seeing someone too. Eventually, we began occasional joint sessions working through the misunderstandings and hurt with professional guidance. Margaret and Jackson continued their campaign to maintain control over Tyler, alternating between lavish gifts and subtle guilt trips whenever he chose to spend time with me. But their tactics were losing effectiveness as Tyler developed a more mature perspective. Jackson offered to buy me a new laptop yesterday, Tyler told me during one of our dinners 6 months after his birthday. Right after I mentioned I was helping you rebuild that classic car this weekend. And how did that make you feel? I asked, echoing the therapist's frequent question. Tyler smiled slightly, like I was being bribed, again. He shook his head. It is so obvious now. I cannot believe I did not see it before. When it came time for Tyler to move into his college dorm, he asked me, not Jackson, to help him move in. As we carried boxes up to his room, I remembered the tiny baby I had once held, the little boy who had looked at me with such trust and admiration. That boy was becoming a thoughtful young man before my eyes, finding his way back to authenticity after years of materialistic influence. Dad, he said, as we finished arranging his room, I want you to know something. I am using the money from that fund, not the money Jackson offered to give me for school. My throat tightened with emotion. You do not have to make that choice to please me, Tyler. I am not, he replied firmly. I am making it because that money represents 18 years of your hard work and sacrifice. It means something. It has value beyond the dollars. Jackson's money, he shrugged. It is just money to him. Around the 1-year mark after Tyler's fateful birthday party, Margaret and Jackson's marriage began showing significant strain. Without Tyler at home to focus on the cracks in their relationship became more apparent. Tyler mentioned during one of our calls that they were arguing frequently, particularly about Jackson's controlling behavior. Mom said something interesting last week, Tyler told me. She said she sometimes misses how solid and reliable you were. That made Jackson absolutely furious. I carefully steered the conversation elsewhere, having no desire to involve myself in their marital problems or to speak ill of either of them to Tyler. By Tyler's 19th birthday, our relationship had been substantially rebuilt. He spent nearly equal time with both households, during school breaks, had regular phone calls with me during the semester, and no longer compared me unfavorably to Jackson. The wound of that public dismissal a year earlier had largely healed, though the scar remained, as a reminder of how easily family bonds can be damaged. For his 19th birthday, we had a small private celebration at my home, just the two of us grilling steaks on the patio of the modest house I had purchased the previous year. As we sat together enjoying the meal, Tyler suddenly looked at me with serious eyes. I need to tell you something that I have been thinking about for a while, he said. I set down my fork, giving him my full attention. Of course. Anything. I am ashamed of how I treated you all those years, of the things I said, especially at that party. He shook his head. When I think about it now, I can hardly believe that was me. We all make mistakes, Tyler, especially when we are young and hurting. No, it was more than a mistake, he insisted. I was cruel. And the thing is, deep down, I think I knew better. There were moments when I recognized what I was doing, but I kept going because it was easier than admitting I might be wrong, that Mom and Jackson might be wrong. I nodded, acknowledging his honesty. That takes courage to admit. The thing I have realized this past year is that real love is not about what someone can give you or do for you. It is about consistency, about showing up even when it is hard, about sacrifice. He met my eyes directly. You taught me that, Dad. Not with words, but with actions, year after year. The simple truth of his words, the genuine understanding in his eyes, felt like the closing of a circle. My son had found his way back, not just to me, but to the values I had tried to instill in him. I am proud of the man you are becoming, Tyler. I said, my voice thick with emotion. So very proud. Later that evening, as Tyler prepared to head back to campus, he turned to me at the door. I almost forgot. I am having some friends over for dinner next weekend at my apartment. Would you like to come? I would be honored, I replied. The following weekend, I arrived at Tyler's small, off-campus apartment with a bottle of wine and a homemade lasagna, my mother's recipe. The place was crowded with half a dozen of Tyler's friends, all talking and laughing comfortably. As I entered, Tyler put his arm around my shoulders, a gesture that would have been unimaginable 2 years earlier. Everyone, he announced to the room. This is my dad, not my mom's ex, not Emilio. My dad. In that moment, I knew that the patient love I had maintained through the darkest times had not been in vain. The bond between father and son, though tested and strained, had ultimately proven stronger than the forces that had tried to sever it. As I look back on this journey now, I realize that dignity in the face of rejection was not just about maintaining my own self-respect. It was about showing my son what real strength looks like. Not the flashy, materialistic strength of Jackson's world, but the quiet, enduring strength of unconditional love and consistent presence. To those of you watching who may be going through similar struggles with your children after divorce or family breakdown, I want you to know that there is hope. Love patiently. Stand firm in your dignity. Be the parent your child needs even when they push you away. The path back to each other may be long and painful, but it is a path worth walking. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have experienced something similar or have wisdom to share about healing broken family bonds, please leave a comment below. Your story might be exactly what another parent needs to hear today. And if this message of hope and healing resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Together we can support each other through life's most challenging relationships and celebrate the healing that can come sometimes when we least expect it.